My name is Hale, Lafon, and it's a pleasure to be here today. From the time when I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to design and construct buildings. That was in the 1870s. I didn't know then that women weren't supposed to do that. I just knew that I wanted to. As I grew up, I learned what society did and didn't want from women. But I learned there was a woman by the name of Louise Bethune in Buffalo, New York, who had started her own architectural firm in 1881. She was my role model, though we would never meet. Bethune isn't much remembered today, and in fact, the same can be said of me. Women's history so often disappears. But in saying that, I'm not telling any women in today's audience anything they don't already know. When I was an undergrad at MU in the late 1880s, I told anyone that would listen that I was going to be an architect. They all laughed, especially since the University of Missouri wouldn't offer a degree in architecture for another 20 or so years. To that end, I was self-taught to a significant degree. After graduation, I stayed in Columbia and opened my own firm. I lived at 411 Hitt Street with my mother. Now, how did I find my first clients? Was I more talented than other Columbia architects? Did I have family connections? Did I possess more grit, more determination, a lot of luck? Did I undercut the other architects in price? Maybe some of those things. Maybe all of those things. I'll leave it to you to decide. Now, men said I couldn't supervise construction and wear a dress. I took it as a personal challenge, and it often fueled my determination. Still, in 1900, there were fewer than 40 women architects nationwide. However, in the 1890s, I was doing very well for myself in Missouri. A local newspaper described me as the only successful woman architect in the state. That was probably true. I think I had 15 projects in the works when that article was published. In 1899, the Columbia Episcopal Church burnt down. And even though there was a male architect on the vestry, they hired me to design the new church. Yes, thank you very much. I was able to salvage many of the old furnishings from the church, including the old carved altar, the baptismal font, the tower bell, and the bishop's chair. Originally, they had considered staying on the current property, but decided against it, and the Rollins family donated property on the corner of 9th and Locust. The construction took less than a year, and the church still stands 120 years later. During the construction of the church, Luella St. Clair Moss, my dear friend and president of the Christian College, and a notable woman in Columbia's history herself, asked me to design what is now St. Clair Hall. A few years later, I married my husband, Thomas Lafon, and gave birth to our son. He was a civil engineer, so we moved to St. Louis for more opportunities. I still design some homes in Columbia, though. You might have seen some of my peanut brittle homes on Westmont Avenue. Now, in St. Louis, Thomas would lay out much of what is known as University City. I designed homes there as well, and I was hired at Ames and Young architectural firm. Move my umbrella a touch. And I designed homes in Clayton and University City. I also designed our own home at 7801 Lafon Place. Did you catch that street name? When you marry the engineer who's laying out the city, you end up living on a street named for him. My favorite element of the home was the second floor study with a 270-degree view of the backyard through leaded glass windows. That home still stands today. In addition to my architectural work, I also worked as a writer for a magazine called Beautiful Homes, and that was owned by E.G. Lewis. Now, he was a character, a serial entrepreneur. He was sensationally successful, But just as often, he was sensationally unsuccessful. He was a visionary, and University City's founder, and its first mayor. A flamboyant character, he could have easily been a Broadway producer. He founded and published the Women's Magazine because he understood that women had a large appetite for women-centric literature. I quite enjoyed writing columns for his various magazines. Until he had to leave town abruptly to escape some mail fraud charges. After several prosperous years in St. Louis, my family and I moved to New Jersey to be closer to where Thomas grew up. He would pass on in 1926, and by then our son was grown and had a family of his own, and we moved back to St. Louis. I would live to be 85 and choose to be buried in Columbia, the place I always considered home. Now, for all the women in the audience, never accept as fact what men tell you you can and cannot do. Thank you for coming.